All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, it's great to meet everyone. I know I'm only seeing a few of your faces, but I have had a chance to meet a lot of you on LinkedIn and through various competitions and interviews. So I'm very excited to meet you and be able to talk for a little bit today. Also, a special thanks for those that are on my teams in providing pipeline and doing your internship with one of the groups that I'm on too. So it's pretty exciting. But I'm glad to be able to talk with you a little bit. I got some good advice on what we should discuss, going over a little bit of my background and kind of my experience coming into Adobe and growing within the Adobe environment. I also wanted to mix in some stories throughout my career with the intent to try to give you guys some advice in the form of stories. Maybe you can learn from my experience and perspective a little bit too. And then I did find a really sweet LinkedIn post on what you can do to get promoted within sales. And so I'll talk a little about some of those points and kind of my take on it, and then give you about 3 or 4 ideas of what you could do as well. And then I understand you guys have some questions that you prepared beforehand or live, and so we'll spend most of the time doing that as well too. I'm not going to rush to try to fill, but these are some things that I'm passionate about too. Just as a little bit of my background and where I come from, I have about 11 years of AE experience. Most of it is enterprise sales, and then around 9.5 or 10 years of management experience. 8 of that for the SDR, BDR type role, and then 2 of that as an AE. I have sold enterprise software before. What I mean by that is it's a complex sell. So there's multiple buyers, multiple stakeholders. The process is not transactional. It takes several months, and it typically requires buy-in from multiple levels across departments. And that's kind of the solutions that I've worked in, primarily because I felt like it was an area where if it was more complex, I had to develop my skills more, which means people would probably pay me more, and it would stay more interesting for longer. That's where that came from. And then as a leader, I spent most of my time in sales development leadership at Workfront before it was Adobe. And then since then, I've been at Adobe for about a year and 9 months. Okay, so that's mostly me, where I come from. A couple of stories that I'll start with in my journey along the way to give you some ideas. First story I have comes from my very, very beginning of my career. I actually started in sales right after high school. And then later finished college. I'll tell you a story about that later on too. And one of the reasons why I started right after high school is my family. We were a bunch of salespeople. My mom and dad were both in sales, and they had started their own reselling company. And I learned about 2 perspectives. One, we felt like sales was noble. It was an opportunity for us to help people determine what they wanted to believe, what they wanted to do, how they were going to lead their teams, and then help them through change. And that really is probably one of the differences between selling enterprise software and other solutions, is you really have to understand the business, have to understand the people, and genuinely want to help them be better in order for you to be successful. And so the other part about it that I learned, besides sales being noble, was that sales was really difficult. And my mom started in sales. Her career really kicked off after all of her kids were in high school. She had 6 kids. I was the second youngest. And I remember my dad having more experience because he didn't have a break in taking care of the kids. And so he taught her, he was a built-in mentor to help her out. And her experience was different than mine. It was different than most. Being a woman in sales at that time period was extremely difficult. And so it was not only did she feel inadequate about her sales skills, but that was laid on the pressure as her peers wouldn't listen to her bosses wouldn't give her credibility, and it was very difficult for her to move forward. And so I remember the countless hours of of tears and challenges as she tried to go through that and become a better salesperson. And that's where I learned, if you really want to be great in sales, you have to look yourself in the mirror every day and challenge yourself and say, I'm not good enough, even if you don't kill your self-esteem, but I'm not good enough. The situations I'm in not good enough, and I need to continue to move forward and improve. And so I learned those things from my mom and dad. All right. Other things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. I have a couple stories I might tell. One of them will be my most embarrassing moment in sales, and another one will be the funniest moment I've ever had in sales. If we have time, I'll try to be quick, okay, and get to those. But the first one, as you guys will experience, being an AE is exciting. It was extremely exciting, and I think it has to do with because of all the challenges. It's really hard to succeed. Just laying the foundation. About 50% of salespeople across the industry actually hit quota. So the majority of salespeople struggle hitting quota. And that's why it's important to pick the right company and the right product so that you're not one in that situation. But in general, it's extremely hard, and you're put in situations that are difficult. But when there's been a few times in my career where some of the deals were just really, really sweet and really, really fun, where you close a deal and it can be extremely exciting. You'll cheer. It's that I'm watching on Netflix the series Alone, and there's this part where they're survivals, right? And the guy goes out and he hunts a deer, and he finally gets a deer after starving for like 40 days, and he hunted his whole life, but for some reason getting that one deer. He really connected with it and meant a lot more. He was really grateful for it and that kind of stuff. So it's like that in sales, okay? Not the surviving part, but the excitement part of what you're trying to accomplish and do. When I moved into why did I go from sales to management is probably a question I like to talk about. It's a little bit different. And so I had been in sales for about 10 and a half years. I was at Workfront, client visits on site in Dallas. At the time I was living in Austin. I was driving home and thinking to myself, all right, I've been in sales for 10, 11 years. I'm barely 32 or almost 32. I'm hitting quota. I'm on track to hit President's Club, and I've only been at Workfront for 9 months. Man, I am the best dang salesperson in the whole world, right? And then I said to myself, I could do this the rest of my career. And I slammed on my brakes. I pulled over and I said, I am not doing this the rest of my career. And it was then when I really started to make a plan for how I could get into sales leadership and what I can do to have a more rich and well-rounded career. At the time, I enjoyed sales. I enjoyed what it brought me and how it helped me develop. But it was time for me to move on and kind of develop myself and move forward. And so I think that's a part of being flexible. There was times when I thought I was always going to be in sales and I invested everything in it. And then when I got exposure to other areas, I found a passion in things like coaching other people or setting strategic plans, training and onboarding other people. And so I found that my skill set was better fit for another area. So be willing to adjust, even in something that my parents both grew up in. I thought I was going to do the rest of my life type of stuff. All right. I also, in order to get that transition at Workfront, going from being an AE to being a manager, there was one principle I wanted to share with you that I thought was really important. When I was at SKO, I was an AE, and my BDR came to me and said in Vegas, "Hey, I'm one opportunity away from hitting quota," and I'd worked with them really closely since before then. Is there anything we can do to help me get there? And I didn't have any opportunities I could just pass to somebody or anything like that. And so we had about 3 hours before we had to leave to go to the airport. And so him and I sat down together and actually did some cold calls and I went and looked at all the people that I'd worked with and talked to, and we ended up getting an opportunity together within that time period. And then after that, it really opened up my relationship with this BDR, where we started to do a lot of, I'd share all the meetings I was going to and how it went, and we got really excited to work each other and help each other out. Well, when I was trying to get back into leadership as an AE, this BDR was one of my champions because I was trying to become a leader of BDRs, and he came and told the person who was hiring me, "Oh, Byron's great at training people. He's been training me for the last 6 months," and shared all the stories about how I'd helped him out. And so the advice I had there was really always be trying to share, always be trying to mentor other people to help them out and figure out how you can help people, because this world really is small, and those people can come back and help you in your career moving forward, as well as just provide a more rich and meaningful experience for you in your job. Okay, the other thing I learned about the first thing I had to do when I was in Dallas was go to school, finish my undergraduate degree. And at this time, I was already 11 years into my career. And so when I moved over to be an SDR manager, one of the reasons why I did that is I thought it would be easier than being a full enterprise salesperson. I had lower OTEs, or they're paying me less. It was less time. I didn't have to travel, and I could focus in on school and try to get done really quickly. There was one thing I learned about how you spend your time in an environment where you can focus on things that you are engaged in and enjoy versus feeling pressure to do. Around the same time, I read a book called 5 Choices to Extraordinary Productivity. And in there, it talks about how there's different quadrants of productivity you can be in. One of them is where you work on things that are important, which is great, but urgent. Has to be done right away. Another is an area where they're important, but it's not urgent. And then there's not important and urgent, which would be like dings on your phone, right? And then not important and not urgent, which would be me binging on Alone on TV, okay? And so you can see all those areas. And the premise of the book was if you spend time working on things that are important and not urgent, you'll do your best work. Well, that's what I learned in that role. Because I wasn't under a ton of pressure and I felt really confident what I was doing, I was able to spend time developing myself in my career and working on things in a matter where it didn't have to be done right away, and so I could do it better and do it right. I think y'all are going to find yourselves in that situation a lot at the beginning part of your career, where even though it's difficult and it's going to be challenging, you're going to have more challenging experiences later on and less time for you to decide what to strategically or what intentionally choose and work on. And so find things that you can start to do now that you know will be important to develop later on. As an example, if you're ever going to go into sales leadership, you have to recruit and hire the best people. So maybe as an intern, you can start focusing in on the interview process. What does make a good interview? And when people are asking you questions, you can think about why are they asking those questions and where is it coming from? Okay, so we still have some good time. We're making good time here. All right, now I'll give you my most embarrassing moment. Okay, and it's a little bit most embarrassing moment in sales, and also a little bit of advice for when you're traveling in sales. So I was at InFocus, and we were down in San Antonio. I was the head of global sales. I was the first salesperson. We had no customers, and they hired me and said I could grow the team. And so at this time, we had been doing it for a while. I had a team of about 5 people, and so it was a stockholders meeting. And so the owner of the company, the 2 owners of the company, the CEO, myself as a director of the company, and then the head of marketing as the other director of the company. We all went out to breakfast before we had a long week of QBRs and that kind of stuff. And as I was going into the car afterwards, we were all parked next to each other. I got in the car incorrectly, and I completely ripped my pants. It was ripped completely. And you could hear it. And my CEO, who was also a salesperson, turns to me, he's like, "What just happened?" And I remember saying, I turned to him and said, "Well, Keith, I just ripped my pants. I'm going back to the hotel to have to change." And obviously I didn't live that down the entire time that we were there. And so two tricks to traveling. 1, get in the car correctly. Make sure you figure out how to do it without ripping your pants. And then 2, bring extra clothing when you travel so you can change into what you need to change into. Okay. All right. Some of the fun things about being in my journey at Workfront and Adobe, I think part of it is quota attainment. It's really fun to hit quota and to be at companies where you can hit quota. One in particular, I just felt like we were all on top of our game as a team. I was a frontline manager as a BDR leader. And we got into the beginning of the meeting. I remember we were in a team meeting, and we sat around and we said, you know what? Here are all the things that are going really well for our team. Like, we had a lot of experience. We had some upcoming events, and we listed all the things that we had. And we turned to each other and said, you know what? We could probably hit 200% of our quota. And that was a little bit crazy. It was Q4, which with December can be really tough. And so we called it. And then we worked really hard together. We figured things out as a team. We shared ideas and practices, and we actually finished at 205% of our number. And that was incredible for experience, as everyone was jumping in together and helping each other out and working in that environment. And so I would say one of the reasons why I suggest you get into leadership, especially sales leadership, is that passion towards a really, really clear goal. Like, every quarter, you know what you have to accomplish and how you're going to go about accomplishing it. And so that was one area where it was a highlight of my career and helping me see, wow, this is something really, really fun. And it's not always this huge challenge. Sometimes it can be this great success that you have and you enjoy with other people. The other thing that I really liked about leadership was promotions and helping people through promotions. So I worked with about 400 or so SDRs on an individual basis. So there's been teams that were bigger, and at Adobe, it's harder to be individual relationships with 300 people. But before then, I had about 400 individual coaching style relationships with people. And then out of that group, I went back and looked at where everyone went to. About a year ago, I looked at it, and about 80% of them had got promoted into a BDR manager role or an AE role, either at the company I was at or somewhere else. And that was a sign of just how important it was for us to focus in on developing skill set and growing in our career. And that's been one of the most exciting parts, is helping the entire team get promoted, and not because out of your control promotions, but developing your skill set and becoming the type of person that you need to in order to be successful moving forward. So that's a really exciting part of my sales journey I wanted to share with you guys. All right, and then here's a challenge that I experienced and I wanted to share with you before too. So there was one time when I was a first line leader. I had been, in my mind, an exceptional first time leader. Okay, and I hope as not being arrogant. I just really felt like I was doing a good job, and that's important to the story. And I had been there for like 2 years doing that role. At this time, I had 11 years of AE experience. I really thought I was really good for being a great leader at the company I was at. And I was in an all hands meeting, and then they announced in the all hands meeting that we had a new sales development director. And I was absolutely devastated because I didn't know there was an open spot. No one talked to me about moving in that role, and I had thought I had been working really, really hard toward getting that next position, and I felt like I was the most qualified person. So that part's not super important. Just know I walked away super devastated and feeling like I'm not sure if this company is the right place for me. I'm not sure if I'm not being valued, and I just felt like I was like, what on earth is going on? This doesn't feel right. I'm out of here. And after I went through the grieving process, there was a moment that I learned about how I can best handle this type of situation. I really started to focus in on recruiting and external, because I felt like internally it was a little bit annoying, and externally I could make a bigger difference. And so I thought about, what can I do to contribute to my industry? How can I be more involved in what's going on and building my brand? Because I realized at the time maybe I didn't have as good of a brand as I thought I had, and I needed to go and develop that. And that moment was actually one of the most pivotal moments in my career, because I started to focus on things like recruiting, and we created a recruiting focus group. I started doing podcasts with people at different areas. I joined all of the universities that were nearby where I was, and their pro sales programs, helped a couple of them start pro sales programs, was a speaker and talking with them and working them. And then I created my own professional association group, which was awesome. I think we had 5 people actually attend the meeting, but it was still fun. And then I helped start the Utah Women in Sales group as one of their board leaders. Help start's a strong word. I was one of the board leaders who helped out with some of their early events and stuff. They started it themselves, but that's really what I helped out there too. And that has created relationships and opportunities for me personally to stay engaged my entire career. We've found really great talent, and it's helped me be a better leader. So that part right there is, after you get over that initial disappointment, because every single one of us on this call will have that, where you don't get the job, you don't get promoted. For me, it works to go deeper and be more committed to my craft versus kind of getting stuck where I'm at. Okay, we still have some good time here. Yeah, so specifically at Adobe, let me tell you that story a little bit too. So I'd been at a Workfront for about 6 or 7 years when they announced in December of 2020 that Adobe was going to acquire Workfront. And my journey is a little bit unique in that I wasn't hired as an Adobe person externally. I was acquired. And in 2020, you guys all know how much challenges there were. People going remote. Workfront had layoffs. We had to change our go-to-market a couple of times and trying to figure out how to be successful. And then in December, when it wasn't our best quarter or best month, is a very, very difficult time as a BDR, was when we found out that we had this announcement. And so that was a lot of change, and it was pretty exhausting. And then at Adobe, there was one thing that I knew was going to have to happen. One of the first conversations that my leader had with me was, "Hey, Byron, I've worked at large companies before. I'm not going to do it again. I'm out." If you want to help the team and have an opportunity, go for it and figure things out. And so even though I wasn't in charge of all of Adobe at the time, all of Workfront at the time, I filled that leadership role in trying to help us with our integration. And a couple of things that really helped out, which I highly recommend you guys do at Adobe or any company that you work with. The coffee chats were really fundamental to me and reaching out to people I thought on LinkedIn might be the right person. I never had anyone from Adobe, as much as that we're a great company, I didn't have anyone reach out to me and try to schedule time to meet with me. Everyone's focused on their own stuff and they're really busy, and my product and group maybe was a little bit smaller. And so if I didn't proactively go and build those relationships, they wouldn't have been there. And those were really critical when it came time for my group to fully integrate within Adobe. And so it was really important to develop those relationships, especially it was exhausting because those relationships would change so frequently. Like we would have somebody who was in charge of operations for Workfront, and then they would leave right away. And then we have to find a new person and build a new relationship. So part of your job, if you can put it in there, is to build relationships. Remember I told you I went back to school as a leader. So when I was a leader, I took an organizational behavior class, and I had a chance to apply it in the moment, right, with my job. One of the things it talked about were two types of leaders. One of them was a successful leader, and one of them was an effective leader. Both of those sound great. A successful leader was categorized as being a leader who gets promoted, who moves up in an organization. An effective leader is a leader who helps their teams accomplish their team's goals. Both great things, right? And they really are great things. The difference is successful leaders, they spent a larger portion of their time networking and building relationships with other people, whereas effective leaders spent more time communicating with their team and trying to solve the team's challenges. I've been both of those in my career at different times. I felt like it was needed for me to be a different one. In large companies like Adobe, you really need to focus in on the successful parts, especially on making it part of your job to build relationships with other people that can help you accomplish your goals. Your individual team is not going to have all the resources you need to be successful. As a leader, you have to help them get the resources they need to be successful. So that was an important lesson I learned, especially here at Adobe. That's why I wanted to join a big company, was to experience what that was like and try to develop my skills in that area. You can develop those skills throughout your career. So even when I was an AE, a junior manager, I went out of my way to try to connect with other people that were in other cross-functional groups. So even though it wasn't normal for a frontline BDR manager to build relationships with our marketing operations team, I still did that. And I built the relationship through needs, challenges, goals that we had together. It wasn't like I just, hey, can we be friends? It was talking to them, giving them feedback on the quality of their leads, making sure their processes worked effectively, and trying to collaborate and share, discuss things like that. So that's one of the things just throughout your whole career, and you can start that now on building those relationships. In sales leadership in a software company, you have to be adaptable to change. So grab a couple of books, podcasts, whatever you need to do on building resilience. It's a skill. It's not a natural attribute. So you can start to develop that now on making so you can handle change. If I tried to list in my mind in preparation for this conversation how much change I and my team have gone through in the last 2.5 years, I couldn't. It was exhausting of how much change that we really went through. And that part of it was because we had the integrations and the pandemic. But then outside of that, most software companies have a lot of change. Each year they change accounts, they grow quotas, and you have to be adaptable to that kind of stuff. So figure out there's ways to handle change, processes you can go through for you and your team. Like learn those things and try to practice those was one thing that I discovered. And kind of the funniest thing I ever experienced, and then my last little takeaway from my career I wanted to share with you. So the funniest things I ever experienced, I really wish I could have another manager with me. His name's Tony Foscarini, sorry. And he tells the story better than anyone. So just imagine we're all at dinner, we're sitting around, and he's telling the story a lot more funny than I was, okay? And it's important before I tell the story that you understand how serious I am about interviewing. Like I went and read all the books on how you should interview, behavioral interviews versus other interviews. And then also I told you I worked for a lot of companies, and so each of those companies had lots of interview processes. I know personally the emotional challenge it can be to try to find a new job and how important it is to individuals. And so I always take it extremely seriously, professionally, and care a ton about people, okay? So have that in mind. Now, with that in mind, okay, the way we did interviews was we would sit down together, and the same group would interview with the same questions on the same attribute over and over and over again. And as an SDR leader, you're always interviewing. And one time we were in an interview, and we were talking about coachability, learning, one of those core attributes. We ask a question, and the person gives us like three different types of answers that we might get, and depending on the type of answer, that's if they're coachable or not. So it seems it's a lot simpler. Well, I started off, asked the question about if they've ever had an experience where they had to give someone feedback and how that went. And then the guy starts talking about how he shared a story of giving feedback to his 3-year-old, which is fine. And he starts talking about how, and then I told her how to put the jacket on, and you had to zip it up this way, and she was like, I don't want to zip it up that way, and I want to zip it up this way. And so I try to explain to her how to do or whatever. And he's telling this 4-minute story using voices of the 4-year-old and him, and this whole like dramatic reenaction of this experience. And I was looking straight at him, like absolutely straight at him. And you can like sense other people on your team because you work with them so much. And I was like, I'm not gonna look at Tony and Carly because I'm gonna lose it. And then Tony tells a story later on that he's sitting there and he's like, Byron and Carly, they're feeling the same thing I are, aren't they? This can't be real. What's going on? And then so we got done, and we went back into to collaborate on the meeting. And I have never laughed so hard in my entire life. Like, I just couldn't stop. It was so funny. And there was other reasons why we didn't hire this guy, so it wasn't just this. But it was so funny and like weird. Like it was like the shock of like we were always doing things a certain way, and all of a sudden like this person just came in and just blew our world apart. So I bring that out because your career could be fun, and even though that was one of the most serious experiences, right, on interviews and stuff, it was still really funny. Okay, so that's good. Again, I wish you had Tony telling you. He does a really, really good job with the voices. All right. The last thing I wanted to share as a leader that I think was really eye-opening for me, and an opportunity that I became the type of leader that I am. So when I very first started leadership, I felt like there was this ideal leader. In my mind, it was always this person who was really caring about the team, who connected with everybody, had a lot of love in their relationships, was really kind to everybody, and helped them accomplish things through caring and emotional intelligence or empathy. Okay, all of those things are actually my weaknesses. And so when I would go in and try to be a leader, I always felt inadequate, like I wasn't doing it quite right. And about a year after I'd been a leader, we got this training called Discovery Insights Profile. And in there, it assesses your personality and how you lead with that personality type. And specifically, there's strengths of each personality type, there's weaknesses for each personality type, and there's a way that you bring value that nobody else does with your personality type. And mine was, like I said, the opposite of what I thought was supposed to be a good leader, where I was very directive. I set clear goals. I hold people accountable to those goals. I like to analyze the background and learn a lot of things and share my insights. And I like to be around people and talk to them and share inputs. And I was sitting next to someone who is the opposite of that. If you're familiar with the colors, it's the green, where he was extremely high in his report, like 90% was green, and I was like 90% red. And he was telling me about how he views people like me. And then I realized in there, it's not that he loved his people more than I did or cared about them more than I did. It's he would love his people and he would automatically show care and concern. I loved my people, and so I had to intentionally ask them about their day. Like I chose to do things to help connect with our people because I cared about them. And so it's like that management principle or experience that I had. That opened up the whole world to me, and seeing that as an individual, I could bring a different perspective and different skill sets to my role and be who I want. And there's not a specific way, a personality type of being a leader or a salesperson. Another story with that has to do with the same idea, but this profile of a salesperson being this alpha leader who only wants money and can crush competition. That's a bunch of bull. Like it depends on maximizing your strengths and helping you be successful in those strengths, creating an environment that's going to help you succeed. And so that was extremely liberating, and I figured out a lot about my leadership experience and what I could do and how I could provide value to the team. So I said I know we have questions. Here's a list. I'll read them, and then you can kind of just have a list and say, Byron gave me a list of things to think about, how to get promoted quickly into sales. So number one, make blowing out your number table stakes. It's true in every situation. Be the top of the leaderboard. Always have success. Find the definition of success. Be that example of that. If you're not, you put your entire promotion track at risk. You have to figure out how to have success in sales. It's way too results driven. And one way of doing that is to lead activity. I know that's super simple. It doesn't really get results. Yes, I know all that story, okay? But do it anyways. Figure out ways that you can maximize activity in ways that are going to help you be the most successful. So I'll just do that. There's a dashboard somewhere. Put your name on the top of what it might be. Share your learnings publicly. Make your manager's life easier. That one, I wanted to explain why I like that one. It's not about making your manager's life easier. It's about being a partner to the success of your team. That's way more important, which makes your manager's life easier. So find out what your team needs and go and actively help them with that. Build relationships. I talked about that one already a little bit. Bringing new ideas to the table. There's a couple one on here. I'll tie that in there. And then sharing your ideas with other people. That's absolutely critical, especially in our role as SDRs, growing in sales. The industry is changing super fast. We need to know what works and what doesn't work. So find ways to share those ideas. Being easy to work with. Being better every single day. And then ask for more responsibility. If you feel like your job is... So as an SDR... and junior salesperson, you'll be doing a job that later on in your career, you do the entire job in about a quarter of the time. And so it's really important, like as your skill sets develop. As an AE, you still have to prospect, but as a BDR, you get to prospect all the time. And so you want to develop those skills. Well, as an SDR, you want to still stay engaged and not get bored. And so develop yourself, take on more responsibilities as an SDR. So it's, I hit quota, but also I helped us with our messaging. I did a couple of trainings. I organized events. I attended recruiting conferences and that kind of stuff. And the last thing for me that I wanted to give you, you're going to have lots of plateaus in your career where they happen. I've had I heard it's every 18 months for top performers, they start to plateau. That's just a book someone said that was true, and I think it's kind of true. You can get engaged, you can learn new things, and it's kind of like, okay, now what do I do? How am I feeling? So I would recommend find something that gets you through those plateaus. For me, it was learning. Whenever I hit those plateaus, I would invest more in reading new books, doing podcasts, trying new things. It doesn't matter if it was necessary for my current job, just going in and starting to learn new things. The worst it ever got, I had to pick up a bunch of hobbies. And so it's like find something that you can do that helps you through those challenges. Don't try to figure it out when you're in the challenge, but maybe start now and figure out okay, when things aren't going very well, when I feel a little bit like I'm stuck, what do I do? How do I get out of it? That might be unique to you. All right, that's it. I'll turn it back over to you all for questions or whatever we want to do next.
Thank you so much, Byron. That was some fantastic information, so many great stories. I want to open up the floor to questions for a few minutes. Feel free to just unmute yourself. I think Courtney has a question.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you read a lot of books and podcasts just to help your leadership and development. Do you have any examples or your favorite books or podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. I do.